NFL draft season is upon us. We're inching closer. Plenty of time to break down the upcoming draft. Today we're going to have a little bit of fun. I'm Kevin Carroll. Welcome to Buffalo End Zone Podcast. Andy Young with me as usual, and you can't hear him or see him, but our guy Jordan is back in the mix. A new dad, Andy.
Yeah, congratulations to Jordan. And he gives us the best mic cues to start this podcast ever. It has really suffered since he's been out on paternity leave. And we are so glad to have him back. He just brings the energy.
He gets you juiced up to get into the podcast, Andy.
It gets the people going.
In our headsets. Someday we'll figure out how to get him on air. But at any rate, Andy, we'll have plenty of time. We'll have guests join us to talk about the upcoming draft. But it is draft season. Everybody's into it. It's also March Madness. Last year we did a little bracket type of thing because it was March Madness. A little experiment today, kind of in that vein, but not brackets per se, as we take a look today on breaking down Brandon Beane's top draft picks by round since he arrived.
Yeah, fun exercise to look at in each round if you had to pick one guy, maybe one all-star draft for Brandon Beane and go round by round, 1 through 7, and pick out which player over the course of the period from 2018, which was his first draft. Remember, it was Doug Whaley and Sean McDermott's draft back in 2017 in McDermott's first season. Then Whaley was let go after the draft that year, and that was a really good draft for them. Yeah. We're talking about Trey White, Deion Dawkins, Matt Milano. They made the trade with the Chiefs. The Patrick Mahomes deal, I think that kind of worked out for both parties. The Super Bowls haven't been there, but Josh Allen's pretty darn good consolation prize.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, that brings us to 2018, Andy. And
Brandon Beane's first draft.
When we take a look at all this in the large scope, Andy, we're not dumb. The people watching and listening are not dumb when it comes to the top pick Brandon Beane has ever made. And that was his first year making picks. And, like, you don't even need to say it. It feels like we should have announced it 2 through 7 and just skip number 1, because unless you're going to go, like, I was joking around earlier that, well, maybe the best move he ever made was getting rid of that first pick and bring in Stefon Diggs. We'll get to Stefon Diggs later. I'm not going to pitch that idea, Andy, but we were joking around about it earlier. So Josh Allen, obviously, when you look at this and you look at that 2018 draft, and like we were discussing before this, 2018, 2022, those are big hitters right there.
Obviously, it's Josh Allen. Perhaps the best overall pick in franchise history when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
I mean, you could make arguments for Bruce Smith, Jim Kelly, some of these different guys, but Josh Allen has a chance to be better than all of them, be one of the greats. Bruce Smith is arguably the best defensive end we've ever seen.
I think last year when it came down to it, Bruce Smith edged out Jim Kelly.
Yeah.
I think that's how we ended up arriving when we were talking about overall first-round picks and stuff like that.
But you have to remember that the Josh Allen pick, while it looks amazing now, was not a slam dunk at the time. They took a lot of criticism for drafting Josh Allen instead of Josh Rosen.
Well, Andy, I was in the newsroom that day. I believe you and
I was at the draft.
You were at the draft. John was out at the stadium. I heard people getting upset in the newsroom when the Bills announced they were picking Josh Allen. Like lifelong Bills fans who were like, you got to be kidding me. I myself, all the stuff you heard about Josh Rosen going into it, when you heard Josh, you were like, Josh Rosen, this is going to be great. But, you know, not everyone, you're right, everyone did not love this pick when it was first made.
Yeah, I mean, there were people who literally said that it would be a miracle or a complete mathematical anomaly for Josh Allen to be a successful NFL quarterback based on what he did in college. They talk about his accuracy and decision-making and all of those things. Playing at Wyoming. I mean, it has turned out better than anyone could have possibly predicted. You just had the NFL MVP, right?
Yeah.
The third in team history. So Josh Allen has turned out pretty well, but I was in the camp that thought Josh Rosen was the pick, and that's why I'm not involved in NFL personnel decisions because I thought Josh Rosen was a pick that they should have made. The interesting topic now is if you go back in time and reverse that draft, who would be the first overall pick? Would it be Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, and Lamar was picked way.
He was picked at the end of the first round.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting debate. Would whoever is the first overall pick that year or this year, if you could go back in time, would you pick Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson?
Right, exactly.
And that's like picking, two different favorite ice creams because they're both amazing.
Black raspberry.
I'm a cookie dough guy. I love cookie dough.
Cookie dough's great.
So
I haven't had ice cream in forever. But let's stay on track here.
Yeah.
Because I could talk about ice cream for hours.
Right.
But
Josh Allen, amazing player. He could go down as one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen. I think from what you want of a traditional quarterback, he's perhaps the most talented we've ever seen, both in terms of running the football with moxie, with good in the community, good teammate, likable guy, amazing arm, leadership, all of those things.
his journey is amazing, too. His NFL journey. We're starting with when he was drafted that.
Right.
First-round draft pick, not the starter in Baltimore, but comes in that game and, dealt with some injuries maybe in his second year. I think he was out for a little bit.
Yep.
And then, that transformation started when Cole Beasley and John Brown showed up and then Stefon Diggs. And then I think he took over from there.
Yeah. So, 2018, his rookie season, the cast of characters was not great around him.
Right.
Remember, they were coming off a playoff appearance for the first time in 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
They had broken the drought. Tyrod Taylor was jettisoned. They let him go. And then they're kind of still resetting the clock that many people thought they were in 17 and 18. And Allen comes in and, there's some obvious struggles, but there were some flashes of brilliance. Obviously, everyone remembers when he jumped over Anthony Barr, the Vikings linebacker, and some of the plays, some of the deep throw to Robert Foster against the Jaguars. Just you saw some of the flashes of spectacular. Then in 19, they bring in Beasley and Brown, and they draft Dawson Knox, and they bring in some of these different guys, and they make the playoffs. And you see the improvements, but it's not great. It's not perfect, and there's still questions out there. And then 2020 hits. They trade for Diggs. They've still got Brown and Beasley, and they come out and light the world on fire. And you're like, holy crap, this is amazing.
Yep.
And then they sign him to the long-term deal, and the rest is history.
Yeah. And so
But that's the easy one.
That's easy off the top. To me, I think it was easy the whole way through. I only have a couple of player or slots that I put a couple of names down for, and that starts at the second-round pick.
Okay.
We talk about recency bias and whatnot, and James Cook having such a great year, drafted in the second round in 2022. Part of that draft we were talking about, with what's going on with him right now with trying to force the Bills to give him a nice deal and stuff going through Twitter and stuff like that. But you can't deny what he's brought to this team. We often joke around that it seems like the Bills can move on from running backs every few years and someone is just going to step up. But it seems like James Cook, more than any of the ones since Josh Allen and Brandon Beane arrived, is the one that really has taken control of being the starter. Maybe not a 3-down running back, but the starter and putting up the touchdowns and the numbers he did over the last year. I have him the top number 2 overall pick. I threw Osiris Torrance on my list.
I've got Osiris Torrance down too. That's a sneaky pick because is Josh Allen what he becomes as NFL MVP? Is James Cook what he becomes without the offensive line becoming what it has, which is for the last 2 seasons, which coincides with them bringing in Osiris Torrance in the second round, been one of the better lines that they've ever had.
Oh, yeah. So he comes in 2023, Andy, and I'm normally the guy who goes for the sexy positions. I generally, to my detriment, detriment.
You got it.
Ignore the offensive line.
Because you were a pretty boy wide receiver.
Hard to tell these days, but at a time, yeah.
You're about at my high school playing weight now. I'm much above my high school playing weight on the offensive line. But by playing, there wasn't a whole lot of that for me either.
Yeah, right.
That's why I'm in broadcasting now.
But Torrance is legit noticeable on like runs by Josh Allen, on runs by James Cook, on Allen being able to get out of the pocket and make Josh Allen things happen. You notice O'Cyrus Torrance, or at least I do, all the time.
Mm-hmm. He is very good. He has solidified that spot at right guard next to Spencer Brown, and they've become maulers. They're bulldozers there. They're fantastic. Also, real quick shout-out, speaking of O'Cyrus Torrance, Jay Skursky, Buffalo News, did a fantastic piece that just ran. He went to O'Cyrus Torrance's hometown down in Louisiana when he was down there for the Super Bowl. Really nice piece, so shout-out to Jay on that. Love to give respect to our local news colleagues who are doing a fantastic job. But, yeah, I think Torrance is a really nice second-round pick, but the difference that James Cook has made, he brings a different element to the Bills' offense and that running game that they have not had through this entire Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott era. That explosive player. Look at how many explosive runs James Cook had last season and the type of difference maker he is. Now, if he wants that $15 million contract, he probably needs to become more of a three-down back. I don't know if that's going to happen because they brought back Ty Johnson. And they have Ray Davis, and they like to rotate those guys around. But James Cook, to me, has been fantastic, really, really strong, nice player, one of the better running backs in the NFL, and a guy who they've tailored their offense around. Of course, it goes through Josh Allen first, but to have that number two guy in the running game has made all the difference in the world as the Bills have kind of changed the way they play offense from the Brian Daboll into Ken Dorsey era into what's become a different type of offense under Joe Brady.
And shout out James Cook. He comes into the league, the brother of Delvin Cook, already established in the NFL as one of the better running backs. And when he first arrived, the question was, can he be like his brother? And he surpassed that in my mind, I think. I mean, Delvin
was he was an all-pro for many years.
I understand that. I'm just saying, and again, while he was on the Vikings, I got to admit, I didn't watch many Delvin Cook football games. So it's not like I'm an expert on that.
Right.
But when you come into the NFL under that kind of pressure, I think James Cook has done more to this point than at least I expected him to do.
Yeah, James Cook, that's my pick for Brandon Beane's best second-round pick.
Yeah, mine too. Third round, to me, seems like another slam dunk, Andy, when we look at this. I don't have anything else going up against Terrell Bernard back in 2022.
Terrell Bernard, fantastic player, undersized. There was some criticism there because of already having Tremaine Edmonds. They let him walk, and Bernard comes in, and he's very good. Becomes the captain on defense and is a solid leader, splashy kind of player, has a nose for the football. But I'm going to make a different argument.
Do it.
Spencer Brown, third-round pick. He has become really good at right tackle, one of the better right tackles in the NFL, and I would argue a right tackle might be more important than a middle linebacker.
Can we say, like, do they still have to be on the Bills? Because I also looked at Harrison Phillips, Andy, back in Josh Allen's pick, back in 2018.
No, they don't still have to be there.
But I think he had a huge impact on that Bills defense and then, moved on to the Vikings after that. Great community guy, too. Had him in my sights, but Terrell Bernard, and again, recency bias.
Make your argument.
For Terrell Bernard?
Yes.
I have to – the plays, his athleticism, and the difference the Bills' defense looks like when he was not out there is night and day to me. I mean, when he came on and took over that position, He's making interceptions. He's jumping up, getting balls that defensive backs would have hard time getting, and he's good at stopping the run. I just think it's early yet for him, but I just think the way the Bills defense operates with and without him, he's just so important to that unit right now that it's hard for me to find any other pick that means as much to the Bills team.
When we talk about the NFL draft, the Bills often go to guys who are uber athletes, who are fantastic size, speed, athleticism type of traits. And when they drafted Spencer Brown, that's what they were looking for. That guy is really, really athletic for a right tackle. Like, he's kind of like a power forward in basketball and has become a standout at that position in the league. Although he did have some rocky times, dealt with a back injury that I think hampered him. He's dealt with some penalties. There were questions, I think, going into the 2023 season. Do they need to find another option there? And he absolutely solidified that. And now they've got their bookends in Dawkins and Brown. So to me, that is more important than Bernard, but it's like splitting hairs. It's very close.
Yeah, my thing with Spencer Brown was that he lives in my brain as a pre-snap penalty guy.
You're a kind of guy who, once you get an impression, you're hard to shake off it. I'm actually surprised, like last year, how quick you were to shift your favor towards Mac Hollins. We've talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
Because you were like, what is Mac Hollins even doing on this team?
Yep.
By the end of the season, you're like, he's my favorite player, basically.
Right.
So, but I think that initial couple of years with Spencer Brown had its, like, his rookie year was pretty good, and then he had a couple down years, and then the last 2 years has really bounced back.
Yeah, I agree. I just think, obviously, Bernard becomes the captain, and, you know, we can go on and on from there. Number 4, Andy, to me, now we're getting into the part of the list where it becomes more and more obvious. You can tell me I'm wrong, but I go back to, again, that 2018 draft, Taron Johnson and what he has done for the Bills defense as far as that nickel corner goes, the best in the league.
One of them, yes.
Right.
He's right up there, though.
He's up there. And the splash moment against the Ravens in that first run to the AFC Championship will go down as one of the greatest Bills plays I've ever seen.
Yep.
I mean, we were sitting there looking at, oh, my God, this is where the Ravens get close, and then they're going to pull ahead, and this is where it all unravels. And he makes that interception, takes off out of the end zone. It was the COVID season. They had those silly end zone touchdown photo booths where the whole teams ran and posed for a picture at the end. But the moment was so big, Andy. And he's another one of those guys that when he's not out on the field, it's just so hard to replace him that it's just trouble for the Bills defensive unit. And anytime, you know, something happens with him, you just kind of hold your breath that he's not going to be out an extended period of time.
I mean, anytime you draft one of the best players at their position in the league, that has to rank up there as your best draft pick. I think Taron Johnson, coming out of a small school, doing what he's done, being a part of that draft in 2018, and just the way that they've been able to set their defense, and for a long time have been one of the best defenses in the NFL, maybe took a little bit of a step back this past season. But for him to be on the field at his size, basically playing a third linebacker spot and supporting run, setting the edge often, but also at the same time being able to cover slot receivers and tight ends and just be a reliable playmaker in that space. Taron Johnson is awesome. Has stepped up his leadership role. He got the Kent Hall Stand-Up Guy Award for us from the media as a guy who is reliable and always, quote-unquote, faces the music, win or lose, tough game, good game.
Yeah.
He's always available, and that's the kind of leadership you see in him. And you're right. When he's not on the field, it's noticeable for the Bills. I mean, Cam Lewis is fine. He's a good player, but he's not Taron Johnson, who, as you said, is, if not the, one of the best nickel slot interior cornerbacks in the league. Another player I think you – go ahead.
I was going to, and I'll see if we're on the same page. I was going to give a shout out to Gabe Davis.
Yep.
Because he was part of that turnaround in those playoff runs and just the amazing catches against the Colts in the playoffs.
The Chiefs game, obviously.
Right.
13 seconds.
That Chiefs game. And he's another one of those guys who, like the Chiefs game, provided great moments early in Josh Allen's career, and I think played a role in getting Josh Allen to where he is right now.
And became a team captain as well in his final season.
Mm-hmm.
I think Gabe Davis was a really good player for the 4th round. I think he wasn't what they needed ultimately in a number 2 receiver. If you think about 13 seconds, he was basically the 4th receiver at that time.
Right.
And so for him to elevate after that when they no longer have John Brown and they no longer have Emmanuel Sanders, for him to elevate to that point, he didn't quite reach that level of consistency, but he is a really good player and a really productive player for them as a 4th-round pick. So that's an honorable mention there.
Yeah.
But 4th-rounder, I think we both agree, pretty easy, Taron Johnson.
Yeah, I agree with that. We'll go to the 5th round now. And, I mean, you know me. You mentioned it. Former wide receiver, blah, blah, blah. Khalil Shakir, to me, as far as the 5th round goes, the great 5th round grab they could get. He gets the new deal. He turned from a guy who was questionable to make the roster to making limited catches, but they all stood out when he came in. And then, this recent year, he's the guy who you could depend on game in and game out for the Bills and Josh Allen to have a good game and a guy you could go to all the time. So Khalil Shakir is who I have, and going through some of the other positions, there's no one else I could go with on this.
I'm going to give it to Khalil Shakir too. Recency bias matters here. He has become a really good slot receiver. He was Josh Allen's best receiver last season and really probably towards the end of the prior season, and has become a really good player. I think Shakir is ascending. I think there's more still there.
Mm-hmm.
I think he can become one of the best slot receivers in the league, and he's a guy that also has upped his leadership, also has become a reliable guy. I mean, his catch percentage is incredible. Almost everything thrown his way he brings down. And the way that he's able to bounce off tackles and make these big plays that you don't see. Think about like the Rams game or the Broncos, different games where
even the one game where he was asked to return punts, and you don't want your best wide receiver returning punts.
Right.
But the few he did left a lot of people looking at like, man, that's a good punt returner there because of what he can do after contact.
And think about when Josh Allen has been at his best. Last season, has a really good slot receiver in Khalil Shakir, that safety blanket, that reliable guy underneath. Cole Beasley in his prime.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost unstoppable. If he needed 8 yards from Cole Beasley, he's getting 8 yards from Cole Beasley.
Right.
There wasn't much more after that. Shakir provides a whole lot more burst after the catch.
Yeah.
Another player I think you can think about here who's no longer on the Bills and didn't have much of a tenure at all on the Bills is Wyatt Teller.
Yes.
Who was traded to the Cleveland Browns, 5th-round pick, spent 1 season with the Bills, didn't really get on the field a whole lot. I think he played in 8 games, started 7, ends up being a 3-time Pro Bowler on that Browns team where they had a dominant offensive line for those few years and running the ball with Nick Chubb. It was the Baker Mayfield era. They were really good offensively on the offensive line, and that's a guy who you would have loved to have still had, right? You trade him away because you don't think he fits into your plans.
Right.
He turns out to be great. He was awesome for several years there in Cleveland. So that's an honorable mention as well. I'll give it to Shakir, but Wyatt Teller, maybe at the height of his position, was better than Shakir is now. But I think Shakir's still ascending, and, again, a really good pick. I liked him coming into that draft, and for them to get him in the 5th round, awesome. I think there were a lot of draft analysts who said that's a steal, And after they finally got him on the field and worked him in, they kind of ended the things with Deontay Hardy and Isaiah McKenzie. They settled on him as a slot receiver. It's been off to the races, as you and I like to say.
I still remember one preseason, and I'm sure I brought this up a bazillion times, but a lot of the talk was you couldn't count on him to catch the football, which is amazing now to hear. Like, I can't remember what preseason game it was, but he ran a quick out, hit him in the hands, went to the ground, and people were like, this is why Shakir will not make this team. You can't trust him. He'll make a good catch, and then he'll drop an easy catch. And he just morphed into someone who's so reliable at one point, or I don't even know if it lasted through the year. He had one drop through, I can't remember the absurd number of targets or whatever.
Yeah, fantastic. He had a streak that was incredibly long of consecutive catches when targeted. So
yeah,
he's been awesome.
Okay, let's go to round 6, Andy, and I'm going back to 2022. I don't want to sound like a jerk, like I'm kicking someone when they're down, but, when you talk about draft hits for Brandon Beane, 2022 is the biggest miss Brandon Beane has had.
And maybe his best draft still. One of his best
turned
drafts.
Into his best draft, and it was cornerback Kyer Elam in round 1. Christian Benford, they grab in round 6. Christian Benford, when it comes to the 6th-round pick, the obvious standout in this one. What he's done and what he's turned into as such a lockdown corner, you don't even notice him half the time because they're never throwing the ball in Christian Benford's direction.
And that guy's going to get paid by somebody.
Right.
Whether it's the Bills. And this strikes me as the type where we're going to hear maybe late in training camp that they've locked him up to a 5-year deal or something, 4-year deal to make him one of the highest paid cornerbacks in the NFL. Benford has been a revelation. He's been really good. And he was the type of cornerback coming out of Villanova that just fits the profile of what Sean McDermott likes. And that's what's so surprising about the Kyer Elam thing.
Right.
Is McDermott, throughout his tenure, has been really good at developing defensive backs and being able to plug guys in, whether it's Dane Jackson, whether it's whomever they bring in, Levi Wallace, different guys, and having them succeed. And Benford fits the profile, was really strong in zone coverage, which has been the McDermott hallmark that may be changing here as we kind of seen towards the end of last season. But Benford, really good, lockdown type of guy, makes the occasional big play, the interception, but just does his job really well. Really smart, instinctive, knows where to be, long arms, which is a big deal for cornerbacks in being in McDermott's mind typically. I think he's been fantastic, and for a 6th-round pick to develop into one of the best cornerbacks in the league through 3 seasons, you don't see that all that often. So that kudos to Benford for putting in the work, being who he is, and also the Bills' defensive staff for getting him to that point.
Oh, 100%. We'll go to 7, Andy.
And honorable mention, I want to throw this name out there for a 6th-rounder. It's not as good as Bernard, but I think Damar Hamlin was a pretty good 6th-round pick.
So funny. I was just looking at the list here on my computer, and I said to myself, should I bring up Damar Hamlin? Because Damar and the whole story with collapsing on the field in Cincinnati and everything he's done now, charity-wise, and to come back after all of that, to go into training camp last year as someone that people were saying he's probably going to get cut or something by the end of training camp, to get that starting position almost on day 1, he took control of it and had a good season, Andy, and he'll be back for another season this year with the Bills.
And if you think about it, he's been he's not been great, but he's been fine when he's been in the lineup.
Right.
Serviceable. When he had to step in for Micah Hyde, leading into what happened to him in Cincinnati, he was decent that year. Started a lot that year as Hyde dealt with the neck injury. And then when he came back the first year after the incident, obviously he's struggled to get on the field and had to get through a lot of hurdles. But then to come in, like you said, last season and win that job, beat out Mike Edwards, beat out rookie Cole Bishop, that speaks volumes to
Yeah.
his perseverance and his fortitude to be able to do those things. While he's not on the level of Benford, honorable mention again for Damar Hamlin as one of Brandon Beane's better 6th-round picks.
I'll do that, Andy. We'll go to the 7th round.
This one's kind of ugly.
Here's my thing. I'm going to start differently on this one. I'm going to go with someone I really thought was going to hit and be a nice 1-2 with Dawson Knox.
I know who you're going with.
And, of course, I bring up my dad every now and then because he's a Boston College alum, and he gets excited every time one of those guys ends up on the Bills. But he hyped up Tommy Sweeney so much to me. I remember going into that year like, this guy's going to be great. And he dealt with, I think, like
myocarditis during COVID.
Right, during COVID. And that kind of derailed his career. But I so thought Tommy Sweeney and Dawson Knox was going to be, at the time, like Gronk and Aaron Hernandez, and those 1-2 punches you had with the 2 tight end sets that teams were kind of starting to do. But, I mean, ultimately, you go through this list from the 7th round. I settled on Dane Jackson, who's now back with the team as a cornerback, a position that the Bills are extremely thin on right now.
Yeah, it has to be Dane Jackson, and I'm glad you brought him up. I think we agree there. Was serviceable when he had to be a starter.
Mm-hmm.
He goes to Carolina, gets a little bit of a payday. The Bills wanted to upgrade. They might be having him back as a starter this year when it's all said and done, depending on what they do here on the tail end of free agency or in the draft, which I still think is probably top 2 needs, cornerback and defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
But Dane Jackson's a fine player, best buds with Damar Hamlin, both Pittsburgh kids, went to Pitt. Good player. Nice qualities, serviceable, solid, good depth piece, and can be a starter when needed and be not great, but reliable, serviceable. You're not going to get killed with Dane Jackson.
Now, the one thing I remember about Dane Jackson before he left was towards the end of his time with the Bills, to me, teams were targeting him constantly, which, I mean, we're talking 7th round picks here.
Right, and part of that is, at the time, are they going away from Benford, too? Because Benford had started to ascend.
Right.
His Dane Jackson's last season was Benford's first, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's got to go to Dane Jackson. Not a perfect player. Could you do better? I think so, but like he's a decent player to have on your roster. A few other.
I forgot about Austin Prohl being drafted in the 7th round.
Yeah. A few other guys, Alex Austin, who's kind of bounced around a little bit, ended up getting some time with New England. Darryl Johnson had a little run there where people thought he was going to be something at defensive end.
Yeah.
And then Balin Spector's still on the team but has struggled to stay healthy, and that's really been the knock on him, and then has sometimes struggled when actually pressed into service on the defensive side of the ball. So those are some guys who are names, but I think it's got to go to Dane Jackson.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And then we'll see what comes up in 2025 draft.
How about a couple UDFAs, too? Best undrafted free agents. I'm going to shout out a few here.
Damn, Andy, you didn't tell me you were going to do this.
I wanted to throw a surprise at you.
This is outrageous.
Yes. Cam Lewis, UB. We're going to run down the UB guys here.
Okay.
Jamarcus Ingram.
Yep.
Good. Joe Andreessen, Buffalo Joe.
We'll see.
Right? How about Levi Wallace?
Levi Wallace, that's
probably
a good pull by you.
That's probably their best UDFA.
Yeah.
Was a starter for them.
Yeah.
For quite some time.
Yeah, no, I can't. I didn't know you were throwing this at me.
It was a wild card. You give me the wild card sometimes, so I thought I'd throw one at you.
All right, I'll give you a wild card towards the end of the podcast. But now you mentioned New England before we got into that, and that brings us to Stefon Diggs now. A week ago, we were talking about should the Bills go after Stefon Diggs and bring him back in.
Tongue in cheek. We didn't.
Right.
Neither of us really thought that was likely.
Joking around, but when stuff like that gets floated out there,
it's fun to talk about on a podcast.
And we also talked about, I saw a report or a tweet that the Patriots looked at Mac Hollins as their big wide receiver get, which we both agreed, while we love Mac Hollins, he's not a top wide receiver get in free agency.
Especially for a young quarterback in Drake May who you're trying to develop into something as a franchise guy.
So now they go out and the Patriots do sign Stefon Diggs.
3-year deal too, right?
Which, coming off an injury, getting up there in years.
Yeah.
My first impression was you have Drake May. Did the Patriots look at what Diggs did to help Allen kind of move up and think even an older Stefon Diggs coming off an injury could be that alpha dog wide receiver that will help Drake May, because their wide receiver staff last year was not good, to say the least.
How about the Patriots do this, though? You got Mac Hollins. You got a whole host of, like, guys you've brought in and drafted that haven't really panned out, young guys there. You've got Diggs. What if they draft Travis Hunter? That's a pretty good, nice group of skill position guys for the Patriots. They still have Ramondre Stevenson as well, right?
Yeah, I don't know if Kendrick Bourne is still there. I always liked Kendrick Bourne, but I don't know if he fell out of favor with Belichick, and then Mayo didn't want to use, but he kind of disappeared. He was pretty exciting to watch at one point in time.
But if you have Diggs, Hunter, Mac Hollins, and then whoever,
Hunter Henry, their tight end,
is good. Is a good player. Yeah. So I mean, I think that's a nice young, with the exception of Diggs and Hollins, group. But those guys still have some gas left in the tank. We'll see what Diggs has when he comes back. My guess is he'll probably still be pretty good.
Right.
If the knee can, I mean, we saw it with Trey White. We saw it with Von Miller. Once you hit that stage of your career into your 30s and then you blow out your knee, it's hard to get back to who you were.
Right.
But I think if he's your number 2, or you can work him slowly back into the lineup, you bring in a guy like Travis Hunter, or you draft another rookie, whether that's you trade back into the first round or a second-round guy, I think those are some pieces to see that there's something there that the Patriots can start to work with.
Yeah, and I mean, Diggs was doing fine with the Texans before his injury.
He was really good.
I mean,
yeah.
The game against the Colts, multiple touchdown game, had Bills fans going bananas.
He was having a good game, too, against the Bills in that game that Nico Collins got hurt. He had a nice little day.
That's right. So, go ahead.
I was going to say, it'll be interesting now. The Bills play him twice a year. What is going to be the reception for Stefon Diggs when he comes onto the field in Orchard Park? He was beloved by Bills fans for the most part throughout his tenure. He was one of the best receivers in the league, one of the best route runners out there, brought the intensity, obviously helped Josh Allen get to be Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. We've talked about that many, many times. Throwing the football in the stands with fans before the game. All of those things. But then it soured, and he wanted out. The Bills said, all right, we can't do this anymore. They had the whole season of 2023 where was he going to come to camp and all those things that were swirling and the negativity, and had he fallen out of favor with either McDermott or Allen, the whole McDermott quote, I'm very concerned he's not here, which ran wild. Mm-hmm. I think that was overblown, but the fracture in the relationship wasn't overblown. And I think you and I maybe differ on this. And you brought up the comparison for Buffalo sports fans with what happened with Jack Eichel and his departure.
So I think this happened, and I brought this up because once the Diggs announcement with New England was put out there, basically coming at a time when Sabres' Dylan Cousins returned with the Ottawa Senators. He was moved at the trade deadline, and he got a very nice welcome back to KeyBank Center. And it led to the comparison between his return and Jack Eichel's return. And then I'm seeing on Twitter, on the heels of this, how do we treat Diggs when he comes back? Like literal Bills Mafia, Bills fans questions back and forth to each other. What do we do? Do we boo him or do we cheer him for what he brought? And it was honestly 50-50 for the most part. As I sat there at 5 a.m. on X trying to get back to sleep but can't, which I know that's not how you fall back asleep, but
we all are guilty of it.
It is what everyone does. And I reached the point of Jack Eichel basically got into a fight with Sabres management, flipped the Bills off or flipped the Sabres off in the city of Buffalo, heading out the door. His post-game press conference, his first return here about the fans booing him, and like the separation with Jack Eichel, I just thought was so bad. It doesn't compare to me, Stefon Diggs leaving the way Stefon Diggs did, because I don't think he ever put out there a shot at Buffalo. We joke around about Stephon Gilmore last week, who said he wanted to go play in primetime, so he wanted out of Buffalo because they were so bad. Like, I know how Diggs ended. I know everything you brought up with wondering if he's coming to camp at St. John Fisher. I think Josh Allen had to sit there with his little smile and say, no, everything's great with me and Stefon Diggs. I never believed that at the time, but I think Diggs played such a role in getting the Bills to where they are right now and getting Josh Allen to where he is right now that part of me thinks he wouldn't be where he is. I'm talking about Allen if Stefon Diggs wasn't here. And I think that gets him or puts him in a place where he deserves not to be booed, because I don't think you have this Bills team if Stefon Diggs never arrived.
Yeah, I can see, though, why fans would liken it to the Eichel situation, because fans often feel spurned by someone who basically says they don't want us anymore. So the Stefon Diggs, whatever happened there, and that's kind of the difference with the Eichel situation, that somehow became more public. Diggs never really dogged out the Bills publicly. Mm-hmm. However, he did say, like right before we got traded, when the fan said he doesn't have to have Josh Allen doesn't have to have a number one like Diggs. And then Diggs replied, "You so sure about that?" And then he was traded the next day. Right?
But that's wide receivers, Andy.
Right. So fans will say, all right, Diggs, you didn't want to be here. You had one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You had one of the best teams in the league. No, you didn't get over the hump, but you're going to question the organization's commitment to winning or Allen's commitment to winning. Whatever happened there, I don't know personally how that went. McDermott and Allen really almost nauseously to me went out of their way to praise Diggs through that whole process. Like,
okay,
oh, we don't want to upset this guy. He's really good. He's obviously not happy with what's going on here in Buffalo, and he might want out. And eventually it got to a breaking point where Diggs' relationship with the Bills, for whatever reason, fractured enough to where they said, we don't want to do this anymore, and we got an offer for a second-round pick. We're going to take it. The Eichel thing,
which looks genius, by the way, right now.
The Eichel thing is uglier because he was supposed to be a savior.
Yeah.
The Eichel is more comparable to Allen. If Allen all of a sudden said, I don't want to be here anymore.
That's fair.
I've got to go. I don't think the Eichel thing is – I think the Diggs thing is less ugly than Eichel, because Eichel, I think before he even got hurt and they had the argument about the surgery and the procedure on his neck, I think he had asked out. It's been reported that he had asked for a trade prior to that.
Okay.
And they bring in Taylor Hall to try to appease him, and that didn't work. They go through the whole thing with the injury and the surgery, and then they let him go, and he's gone. And he has the surgery, and he wins a cup with the Golden Knights. That's a Sabres curse, that your good players trade away, and then they win cups.
See what happens, Dylan Cousins.
Right. So I think that's uglier. The way Eichel kind of performed, that histrionics when he came back and was booed. But even leading into that game, he had nothing but love for Buffalo. In the interviews he did in the pregame, like I covered that, and he talked about, man, I wish we could have won a cup for RJ, and he talked about James, the security guard over there at KeyBank Center, and different things, and he enjoyed his time in Buffalo. He said the right things going into it, and then as soon as they booed him, because fans took it as, you didn't want us, you didn't want the Sabres, you didn't lead us to the promised land, we didn't even really ever get good with you, and you were supposed to be a savior, a big F you.
Didn't the team tank to get him or McDavid too?
They did.
And I said at the time, be careful when you do stuff like that. Right. It might blow up in your face.
So I just wonder, because Diggs, through his actions or behind-the-scenes efforts, clearly wanted to get out, if fans will take it that same way. But it won't be nearly as poor a reception, I don't think, as to what Eichel got. And that's been fun. So he gets booed. The Sabres win that game, I remember, his first trip back. And then the next time he comes in, he gets a hat trick.
Right.
And he's really kind of done really well against them since.
I would say this, Andy. If the Patriots were the Patriots of old with Tom Brady there and Diggs ended up there, I would say yes. Boo Stefon Diggs for going to the enemy. But the Patriots aren't even,
They've been irrelevant for like 4 or 5 years.
They're like a tiny speck in the NFL landscape right now. I mean, he's with a second-year quarterback. So it's not – I think there's still this feeling that the Patriots is still the arch enemy, but they're nothing.
Diggs' 4-year run, 4 years I think he was with the Bills, is arguably one of the best in team history. I mean, there's very few guys that can live up to that. Molds for a time, obviously Andre Reed, a little bit of Stevie Johnson, a little bit of Lee Evans. But
we'll get into Stevie Johnson.
Yeah. Well, let's dovetail there then. Go
okay,
for it.
So Stevie's going to be joining me next week. Andy is taking a well-deserved vacation again. No, I'm just kidding.
My son's having his tonsils out. That's the real reason.
I know.
I'm taking next week off.
I know, but Stevie Johnson, former Bills wide receiver, is going to be joining me from out in California. So
our Buffalo End Zone analyst on the post-game show, he's been awesome.
Yeah, so we'll catch up with Stevie, and one of the things we're likely going to get into is what the heck is going on social media between him and Revis, because Stevie has been going at it constantly. I haven't seen much from Revis, and you were filling me in earlier because I just saw that blind and couldn't figure out how any of it started.
Yeah, so Darrelle Revis, obviously Hall of Fame cornerback for the Jets. And they called it Revis Island for a reason. He's one of the best cover corners, lockdown guys to ever do it. But Stevie Johnson, in his tenure with the Bills, did have some wins against Darrelle Revis and was able to, maybe more than most guys, have success against Darrelle Revis. And Stevie has been known for kind of his unorthodox route running and the ways that he got open and the improvisation. And I think he was able to win some matchups with Darrelle Revis. And someone posted about Revis being one of the best ever and nobody could ever get open with him. And then someone tweeted that, well, Stevie Johnson cooked you. And then I believe Revis had a retort, something about Stevie only ever getting 4 catches for 70 yards, all this nonsense. And then Stevie, our buddy, has gone in on Darrelle Revis on X, posting video clips, talking about Revis and his matchups and how he was able to beat him. And it's been really funny to watch. And it had X going aflame on Bill's Twitter for a few days there.
I think Stevie, handles most of his business well. So I'm not like saying when he comes on, I'm going to make a big deal about it, but it's just interesting. I texted him when I was asking him to come on. I'm like, I know you're busy with Revis right now, but would you mind coming on the podcast? And he was just like, hey, yeah, I'll get back to you later. I'm at my daughter's some sporting event, and didn't acknowledge that I brought up Revis, which I was like, all right,
So you'll have a lot to unearth next week in my absence.
Yeah, absolutely. So Stevie Johnson and I coming your way next week. Let's do a little 3 and out before we go. Andy, this is probably not a popular opinion or not a popular take when it comes to sports. I did fill out an NCAA tournament bracket. I think we talked about me having Duke winning.
Mm-hmm.
I've not watched 1 second of the tournament.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter to me.
Wake up the next morning after the game, see who was playing on one shining moment.
I mean, I was.
And did you win your bracket?
I was out sick last Friday, and I'm like, anyone else who would call in sick on that Friday, you'd be suspicious that they just wanted to go to a bar and watch the tournament. I knew full well no one was suspicious of me doing, like, not really being sick and going out to watch the NCAA tournament. If it's on, I'll watch it with people if I'm somewhere, but I just don't seek it out.
Funny interaction. I've watched a little bit of it, not like I used to. My enjoyment of college basketball has changed over the last few years, but Carl Jones, our colleague from Channel 4, sports guy, played defensive back at Syracuse, posted on X. Who else got used to get in trouble, or shout out to the teachers who would let them watch the tournament, stream it on their iPads during class in high school. And I'm like, iPads, and I stream it. My teachers, and I think probably yours too, we had the old AV carts with the great big TV and the VCR. Mm-hmm. They would wheel those AV carts, and we had this cool global studies teacher, Mr. Mangano, who was also my 8th grade basketball coach.
Why does that name sound familiar?
Mike Mangano. He was an assistant football coach at Frewsburg. Okay. You probably ran across him. He would wheel the cart into our 10th grade global studies class, and we'd sit there in his class, we'd do our work, whatever, and then for the last little bit we'd watch the tournament. And it was on all day in his room. He loved it. He was a basketball guy. And so I just posted a picture of one of those AV carts on X to respond to Carl. I'm like, these are the OGs. Streaming it on your iPad.
That's where I saw that. I'm like, I recently saw a visual of that. Yeah. It was you.
So that shows my age against Carl's age. I mean, people would maybe consider – I have a baby face, so maybe people would consider us in the same cohort.
Yeah, me too.
They not like us. We are not the same.
iPhone wasn't even a dream. iPhone was something on the Jetsons when I was a kid.
Right.
Oh, the future. What I do –
Oh, speaking of iPhones, I got to tell you this story really quick.
Yeah.
We were talking about with my daughter, who's 10 years old, going to be 11 next year. She's going to go to middle school next year. And we were talking about because – she might have to get off the bus on her own, and we might not be home from work, whatever, that we might get her an Apple Watch or a cell phone. And we're really resisting the urge to get her an iPhone. Don't love her being on social media. I mean, studies are all out there. It's damaging for kids.
Right.
It can be. Bullying, screen time, all those things. We'd love to hold off as long as we can on getting her a smartphone. And I said, Ella, instead of an Apple Watch, which you can call and text on, but you're not going to really be on social media, but you can still get a hold of us. What if we got you a flip phone?
Classic.
And she was mortified at the idea of a flip phone. And she was like, what? Like one of those old men who can't even use an iPhone? I'm not bringing out a flip phone at school. I'd rather have nothing than to use a flip phone. That just tells you where we are in society. I was like, yeah, let's get her a flip phone. No social media, but she can still take pictures. She can text on it, make calls. Absolutely not. It was like I just presented her the dumbest idea of all time.
Hey, show her Saved by the Bell and tell her you can
Zach Morris.
You get a brick phone.
That was awesome. Everybody wanted to be Zach Morris.
Oh, heck yeah. So not the NCAA college basketball tournament for me, but I do love hockey. The NCAA hockey tournament's about to start up. And a cool story here, because I went to Sacred Heart University. They play teams like Canisius in Niagara, and Bentley is one of the teams that are in there. They knocked out Sacred Heart in the Atlantic Hockey Tournament, then Holy Cross, get the automatic bid. The reward for Atlantic Hockey is you get to play the top team in the nation. So coming up on Thursday, it's Bentley versus Boston College in the first round. Bentley's goalie is one of the best in the country, Connor Hasley from North Tonawanda.
Oh,
so
did not know that.
He's out there. A lot of press in Atlantic hockey, but now your job is to go in and face the best team in the country, pounding you with shots. But I was there when RIT pulled the upset. They're in the Atlantic Hockey Conference as well. It's doable, but this kid might be in for a long day. There are other kids from the Buffalo area who are on different teams in the tournament. Liam Lesikowski is with Maine. They got in there. He's the son of the 11-Day Power Play founders.
Mm-hmm. Mike and Amy. That's coming up soon.
That's coming up soon. I'm back in it. You know, if you want to donate, we'll get to that as we get a little bit closer. But that's cool for me because I'm going to watch it anyways because it's Boston College. But it's cool to see that a local kid is in there. I think there's someone from Orchard Park on that team, too.
Awesome. Always love a good local story.
Colby Amici, sophomore, Orchard Park, New York. So
Okay.
there you go. Final thing, Andy, what you watching? I just want to get into this because we talk about those nonsense things you see on Facebook now.
Mm-hmm.
I clicked on something once. Now I get notifications for the best horror movie you've never seen.
Okay.
Because I like ghosts and stuff like that.
The paranormal.
Yeah. So I'm like, all right. And I keep writing some of these movies down. They're usually on Tubi. I think this one was on Netflix. And I watch them, and I'm usually disappointed. So I saw this thing for this movie called The Ritual, which just, they're like the scariest ending to any horror movie ever. So I tried watching it with my wife, Claire. She left 10 minutes in because it was stupid. I stayed up and watched the whole thing. The ending was not the scariest ending of the world.
Mm-hmm.
If you're into it's almost like a hidden monster is in the woods hunting down these 4 friends who went on a camping trip.
Okay.
And then when the monster shows up, it's all supposed to be gory, but it was goofy in my mind. So
I hate those kind of movies.
I hate it. I don't know why I get stuck in it. Andy, I have a list of 3 new movies that I might watch this weekend that are all in the same genre.
I started watching just last night because I always feel guilty when I come in here and I have nothing to say that I watched other than WWE.
Which is fine.
Yeah, I started last night season 3 of Full Swing on Netflix.
I haven't even looked at that yet.
And it was cool to remember back about last year's Masters and some of the storylines. Scotty Scheffler winning it again.
Getting arrested, is that in it?
That's next episode, I think.
Okay.
That's coming up. That was the PGA.
Yeah.
Ludwig Oberg, that kind of run. And
yeah.
coming off the Ryder Cup and what he did in the Masters. The amateur, Neil Shipley, they followed him around, which was really cool. So getting back into that, especially as we kind of gear into Masters season. And it's getting me ready for golf because let's be clear here. That's all I want is to go play golf. And we had last week that 70-degree weather, and now it's like in the 20s and 30s again, and it's snowing. And I'm like, come on, dude. Get us to May so we can play some golf.
Just get there. I usually went to South Carolina. I'm not going this year for my golf trip with my friends. That would have been in like 2 weeks. So in my mind, I'm like, I'm ready to go. I don't want to go to a golf dome. I want to play golf.
Yep. Simulators cool, indoor ranges are cool, whatever, but I just enjoy being outside. Driving the cart, having a beer, fresh air, sunlight pounding down on you. It's just so much more fun.
Have you seen this thing called Golf Daddy?
Were you telling me about that? I think you were.
Maybe I was, because I tell everybody about it. It's only like $100. But it's like a mat where you don't have to put the ball down.
Yeah.
And I think you use your iPhone.
Yeah.
And it's like a golf simulator just hitting off the mat.
And it sees where your swing plane goes,
right,
where your contact is. And you can kind of figure out, did I hit a draw, fade,
yeah, and
slice?
You use real golf clubs. What?
I'm kidding. That's John Scott.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big old slice.
So,
I mean, my brother. You've played with my brother.
I have not.
I think you did. You haven't?
No,
my brother can be a really good golfer, and he has often big old slice off the drive. But he's really good with his irons, touch around the greens.
Yeah.
So he's good scramble player. But his drives, man, if he's off, it's true.
That's it. I mean, I'm usually solid down the middle, Andy, but I don't drive far, and I'm inconsistent everywhere else.
You usually can find your ball. That's better than me.
That's the fact, Jack. All right. Like we said, Stevie Johnson will be with me next week. We'll see what else. Something's always happening around the NFL, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk draft. There could be a signing or a trade. Who knows? A lot going on in the next month as we inch to the draft. I've got some prospect profiles, which will be on SpectrumLocalNews.com, where we kind of look at individual players who I think could be or should be on the Bills' radar in the first couple of rounds. And so that's always fun. That'll be a digital feature on SpectrumLocalNews.com. We'll have some articles there as well.
All right. I just noticed we kind of have similar shirts on. We got to go. Thanks for joining us.
Great minds.
As always, everybody, and we'll see you next week.